Now, our next speaker has become a good friend, very interesting man, someone who is deep in their heart committed absolutely to integrity, committed absolutely to bringing forth information that Americans and the world desperately needs, is an avatar, someone who will parade in front of the crowd and say, this is the way, even if everybody's going the other way. This man is an internet titan. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Joseph Mercola.
Right,
thank you so much. Thank you. Let's give it up for Dr. Joseph Mercola!
Hey, thanks. Well, thank you. It is just delightful to be here. Actually, delightful is a very, very serious understatement, because the energy in this room is just so phenomenal. It's like totally different than most presentations I go to. It's just so, it's like being in grad school here. You know, you are the top of the people who get it. So, and I'm learning a lot of information, so thank you for coming. So, actually, there's a lot of information here. A lot of this stuff is new, so if you've heard me speak before, you might be surprised at some of the information I'm going to be sharing. But who gets the newsletter? Who doesn't get the newsletter? Oh. All right, well, you got to go to the website and sign up for the newsletter. Problem is, it's free. So, and if you have a question, because you have a personal medical issue, some of you may see me in the hallway and stuff, but it's hard for me to do that, because to do justice to answer that, I'd have to get a whole history, and if you could refrain from doing that, would be really helpful. But I can answer general questions. Probably best to find a qualified healthcare doctor, and there's a number of them out there. What I normally recommend is to go to your local health food store and kind of get a consensus through the social networking thing and see who in your community is really good. And we're actually working to developing a sort of a semi-certification process on our site to do that. But if you do have questions, you can start on our site, because we've got 250,000 pages on our site. So just go to the search engine and type in your question. You're going to come up with dozens or hundreds of pages. And back there. Now, truth. This is interesting. There's a German philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer, who 200 years ago said that truth goes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed, then it's violently opposed, and then it's finally accepted as self-evident. Now, this occurs through all disciplines. It's not just natural health care. Because there are, interestingly, I was thinking about this the other night, there are physicians who are in the traditional paradigm. I could think of Dr. Barry Marshall, who got the Nobel Prize in '95 for figuring out that Helicobacter causes ulcers. And then now we have physicians currently, like Dr. Lusted and Richard Johnson, who are advocates of fructose. Traditional doctors, but they're still being chastised and criticized because they're going against the grain. And that's what we're doing now. We're going against the grain. So even though it's true, it's the process that we all go through. So no one's picking on us, is the bottom line. Now, the drug companies are really at the crux of this challenge. There's about 6 of them. They make about $500 billion a year. So that can buy a lot of influence, Because every year, they spend about $4 billion on direct-to-consumer advertising. That sounds like a lot of money, right? $4 billion? But they spend $16 billion on brainwashing physicians. That's over $10,000 for every doctor. And as a result of this influence, they have a very carefully, masterfully orchestrated process where they control the entire system. They have been able to really control some of the key physicians on expert committees and leaders in the journal. So they really are brainwashing almost all the physicians who are going through the system. And they've done it very effectively. Eventually it's going to crumble because the system doesn't work. It doesn't work. Because drugs are not the answer. Last year, 4 billion scripts were filled. 4 billion. Now that works out to 1 prescription a month for every single person. That sounds like a lot, right? Does that sound like a lot? Yeah. Well, I haven't taken drugs in over 2 decades. Most of the people in this room haven't taken drugs in that long. So someone is taking our drugs, and they're taking more than that. Now, I got some information for you. You may not be aware of this. Had lunch with David, and he didn't know this, and David's a pretty smart guy. The drug companies are running out of drugs to sell because their patents are expiring. They're not making as much money. It's becoming more difficult to find drugs. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is they found a replacement. It's called vaccines. 200 vaccines are in the pipeline right now. 200 new different vaccines that are targeted to be mandatory and compulsory. So you can imagine one of our big initiatives is to stop this nonsense. And we are forming a joint alliance with the National Vaccine Information Center and really are making a big dent. And I'll tell you some of the progresses we've made.
What's your website?
The website is Mercola.com. Now, agribusiness is also another problem, because it's not just the drug companies. 70% of all the antibiotics used are for animals in this country. Did you know that? 70%. So that when you're eating non-organic meat, you are getting that bacteria, those antibiotic-resistant bacteria in your system and leading to potentially disastrous consequences. MRSA and E. coli and those things that kill people all the time. Now, pesticides are another issue. We are taking there's another thing that came in late. 1 billion pounds every year is being used in this country. That works out to 3-pound bag for every single person. Now, that sounds like a lot, right? I eat organically for the most part. Most of the people here eat organic. So someone's using our pesticides, and it's more than that. Now, it gets worse. Because for every $1 they spend on good food for kids, they're spending $500 on junk food advertising. They're brainwashing these kids. And last year they spent $65 billion on diet aids and $130 billion on fast food. So it's a big problem. And we only spent $30 billion on vegetables, which is really the crux of healing, is you've got to have good vegetables. So what I want to talk about today are some of the primary influences on I want to give you pearls that you can take home, that you can use immediately to get you and your family healthy so that you can take control of your health. Now, one of the most important ones, unfortunately, one that has gone over on this stage before, not this year I don't think, but 2 years ago, recently, Nick Ortner, who put together the Tapping Summit, who is in this event this weekend, put together a presentation up here where we taught people how to tap, and it's type of energy medicine. The reason that works is there's this process called epigenetics, that we are not dictated by our genetic structure, that we have genes that are regulated by our emotions, that we can turn off genes, turn them on with our emotions. And Bruce Lipton has done the best work on this. He's a biologist and does phenomenal stuff. If you want more, I would definitely look at his work. He's got some great videos. Very, very good speaker. It's been my experience clinically that emotional wounding before the age of 5 or 6, before the time that the conscious mind forms, is the single most important influence for future disease. And it could devastate you 20, 40, 60 years later. It's like a time bomb, an absolute time bomb. So being raped and nearly murdered at 25 years old, and my last EFT session was with a person where this is the case, is not as important as the scolding her father gave her at 4 years old. Because that is what caused the problem. And I did an intervention in that, and that's what we thought was the issue, but we did the intervention of the 4-year-old that she got better. So there's a number of ways to address this. Prayer is one. Meditation is another. These are age-old strategies, and they are very effective if used carefully. But the newer one that we use now is energy psychology, and that doesn't mean it's either or. You can certainly use them together. Traditionally, it's been EFT or emotional freedom technique, and it's been superseded now by MTT, meridian tapping therapies, and that's what we use in our practice. So if you don't know about these and you've got something, I would find a clinician to do that yourself, a spirit, because there's an art to this, so you really want to, don't treat these serious illnesses by yourself. You can, but I wouldn't recommend it. Find someone who's skilled. So that's a big thing. This is just an interesting study that proves that. It was called a $3 billion hoax. They did a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized trial. That's as good as it gets in science. They did it at the most prestigious university. They did an arthroscopy, and then they did a fake arthroscopy to try to fix the person's knee pain. And you know what? There was no difference between the people who got the fake surgery and the people who got the real surgery. Now, that mean that really, to me, is a powerful demonstration of the power of placebo, because their mind healed the wound. And you didn't need to have to do surgery. And you can do similar interventions with cardiac bypass surgery. You know, if you go through all this thing where you put your life at risk, you go in a cardiac bypass machine, you run with the knife, and you could die, you think you're going to want to believe that's going to make you better. Well, it does. It's a power, but you don't have to have the surgery. So, now I've already emphasized that from my experience, there is nothing short of magic of these energetic emotional interventions. That is the most powerful treatment I've ever seen to get someone better quickly. It's almost instantaneous and magical. But if we shift to the physical, what is the single most important physical factor that will accelerate your aging? Speed it up. I just said it was, no, that's emotional. Stress is emotional. Bad diet. Not exercise. Those are good things, but it's not it. Sugar, getting closer. Vitamin D is actually, who said vitamin D? That's not the answer to this one, but it's because of the answer, but that's a good one. That's a real good one. You remember that one. Insulin. Actually, more specifically, it's leptin. So, but insulin will definitely work. So you got to stay away from sugar. And who didn't know this? We've known this since we've been kids, right? Well, I am going to share stuff about you that you didn't know, that I didn't know until just a few months ago. That's going to open your eyes, and you will not believe, and you will be shocked, unless you've been reading my site. Now, if you've seen me speak before, you are ineligible. That means you cannot answer this question, okay? So otherwise, you'll ruin the punchline. Now, if we take someone's blood out, there will be about a gallon of blood in there. And if we've got all their blood in this gallon of blood, and we have a machine that extracts all the sugar, and we take all the sugar and put it in another container, how much sugar is going to be in that container? 3 ounces. A pint. Anyone say higher? A pint, 3 ounces? Half of it, so half a gallon. Well, the answer is a teaspoon. Do you know what happens if you go to a tablespoon of sugar in your blood? You go into a hyperglycemic coma and you are dead. Okay? Your body regulates this very carefully. So it doesn't want you to die right away, so you'll die slowly. It raises your insulin level up so you don't die, and you'll die chronically of chronic degenerative diseases. Now, this is just to show you that there is indeed light at the end of the tunnel. Yes, indeed. We are, because I want to tell you, we are making headway. We're making success. Remember, I warned you about the vaccines, right? Well, last year we had something called the swine flu. President Obama said we should get the shot. It was a public health crisis by the World Health Organization. Did you remember the news every day telling you to get the shot? Yes. Well, guess what happened? It wasn't as bad as they said, which is what I said all along, right? And it turns out that our site was probably the single biggest influence and the reason why 80% of the public said no. No, we're not going to do it. We can do this thing. We can win. All people need is information, and they're being prevented from receiving that information because of the carefully orchestrated manipulation of these multinational corporations. So the information is just spread out, and you are the people who are going to do it. You know, I'm providing some of the data you can do it, but ultimately it's the people who spread it. So some of the other things we did, I don't know if you know, the U.S. was the only country in the world that didn't have squalene added to the swine flu, which is a very negative adjuvant that will devastate, kill tens of thousands of people down the road because they got it. We also were successful in preventing mandatory vaccination, which is really the bad thing we want to avoid. So we were successful at that, and we're making dents. We're actually showing them how ludicrous their crazy arguments are. All right, so that's a good success. Type 2 diabetes. How many Americans have diabetes or prediabetes? A lot is the right answer. 80%. That's a little high. It's 1 in 4, 25%, 80 million people. Still a lot. As you said, it is a lot. So, it's an epidemic. 1 in 4. There's a lot of people in this room who have diabetes or pre-diabetes. And I would say if you have pre-diabetes, a big percentage of you don't even know you have it, which is sad. But certainly everyone knows someone who has this. Now, what's the biggest single source of calories in the United States? Sugar? High fructose corn syrup. Yes. Sodas. That's what it is. So how many sodas does the average person drink? 4 a day. No, I don't think it's 4 a day, but it's 56 gallons a year. 612 ounce. So it's about 2 a day. A little bit, almost 2 a day. That's a lot of soda. Yeah, if I've been drinking soda in 2 decades. You're not drinking them. Someone's drinking our soda. And they're having 4 a day. You're right. It is just shocking. To me, this is so crazy. It is the single easiest thing to give up is to not drink soda. Come on. I've known them for so long, but you see these people drinking soda. It's like, oh. They're killing themselves. Now, the average American is having 3 hamburgers a week, too, and 4 orders of fries. Now, the hamburgers aren't that bad unless you get them from not great places, but the fries are terrible. The only thing worse than fries, of course, are? No, Dunkin' Donuts. Now, this is important, folks. This is very important. Fructose is what we have a campaign to educate and eliminate from the United States, or at least make it optional like smoking. And you know what? We're making success. We're having success because just like the swine flu, do you know what happened on Wednesday, less than a week ago? Pepsi decided to remove high fructose corn syrup from Gatorade. They're getting the message. Now, why is fructose? Now, most everyone here knows, it's no mystery that high fructose corn syrup is bad. The public gets it. That's why they removed it. But what you don't understand, and what almost every physician doesn't get, is why. And I didn't understand so recently, so I'm going to tell you why, okay? Now, first of all, look at the number, because it has other implications that you don't understand yet, that you're doing behaviors that you think are healthy that are not. And you need to change these behaviors, okay? It's really going to open your eyes when we go into this. So, 100 years ago, 1 century ago, the average person, if we had a lecture this size, we'd only be having 15 grams of fructose. 1 teaspoon is a gram, so it's 3 teaspoons of fructose, okay? 1 teaspoon is 5 grams, I'm sorry. So as we go up, all the way till today, we're looking at the average person is having 70 grams of fructose a day. Now, if you're an adolescent or a teenager, you may be having twice that, 150 grams of fructose a day. And there is no question in my mind, I've looked at this very, very carefully, that this is the single biggest reason that we have an epidemic of obesity in this country. This is the reason. It's not sugar, it's fructose. It's a very specific type of sugar, and I'll tell you why in a moment. If you go to sweetsurprise.com, the corn industry's website, they'll have all these groups that say, hey, it's good. There's no difference between the two. Actually, you should go there if you want to laugh. It's pretty funny. They talk about glycemic index. And did anyone hear about the glycemic index? No? Not a lot of people. You have? Well, guess what? It doesn't work. It's irrelevant. The glycemic index is nonsense. Okay? It's irrelevant. Let me tell you why. Fructose, the single most pernicious influence for obesity in this country, doesn't touch, it has low glycemic index, it's irrelevant. It doesn't cause insulin levels to rise. But, and as a result, we thought it was safe. It massively increases insulin and leptin resistance, which is what causes the whole problem. So it's not the glycemic index, and they use that to confuse it. What else does fructose cause? It causes rapid weight gain. It makes it difficult to, not impossible to lose weight because it impairs the enzyme that causes you to digest fat. And in fact, it causes you to make fat. Unless you're exercising, the fructose is almost immediately converted to fat in your body. So a lot of these studies that says trans fat was so bad, trans fat was bad because it was associated with diets that were high in fructose and other dangerous fat, not the saturated fat. Saturated fat is actually good for you. You need saturated fat or you're not going to be healthy. Healthy saturated fat, there's different types. I mean, that's in coconut. I mean, does anyone think coconut oil is dangerous? and actually